Praise ye Yahweh, sing unto Yahweh. So praising Yahweh, singing to him, right? A new song. And his praise in the congregation of saints, Israelite. Let Israel rejoice in him that made him. Let the children of the remembered ones, to Zion one, be joyful in their king. Let them praise his name, Yahweh. In the dance, let them sing. See, praise and sings in the same sentence. Sing praises unto him with the timbrel and the harp. For Yahweh taketh pleasure in his people, the Israelites. He will beautify the meek, we the meek, with salvation. He's going to save us, the elect. Salvation means to be saved from impending danger, right? Delivered from impending danger. Let the saints be joyful with glory. Let them sing or praise. Let them sing aloud upon thy beds. We're going to be getting up in the morning. So we're going to get up in the morning singing. Hey, you're going to get up, you lay with one of your wives or concubines or whatever. So when we get up in the morning, we're going to have a smile on our face. That's what Psalm 149 is talking about. When we get up in the morning, we're going to be singing and dancing. We're going to go to sleep happy. We're going to get up happy. We're going to eat happy. Every time we eat some food, it's going to be good. So a typical morning in the kingdom, the first coming to America. Akeem, he was in the kingdom of heaven. So that's how we're going to be. You're going to be able to communicate with the animals. And you other nations, number one on the list is going to be you Edomites. You're going to be out in the field, getting your ass whipped, working your ass off. To Psalm 149, and so we're going to wake up praising the Most High in our beds. When we go to sleep, we're going to go to sleep happy. We're going to get a good night's sleep too. We ain't going to be waking up in the middle of the night coughing or going to the bathroom. There's a saying, waking up on the wrong side of the bed. We're going to wake up on the right side of the bed every day. Yeah. We're going to wake up on the right side of the bed. Our Johnsons are going to be at attention. Your women are going to be fine, no blemishes whatsoever. All your wives are going to be perfect. And all your wives are going to be virgins. And they're all going to be young. And none of them are going to commit adultery with you. The 7 women shall take hold of one man. They're going to happen on this side, brother. And it's going to continue to happen on the other side. Hey, the scripture said we're going to raise his name in the dance, right?
Psalm 149. Praise ye the Lord. Sing unto the Lord a new song, and his praise in the congregation of saints. Let Israel rejoice in him that made him. Let the children of Zion be joyful in their king. Let them praise his name in the dance. Let them sing praises unto him with the timbrel and harp. The Lord taketh pleasure in his people. He will beautify the meek with salvation. Let the saints be joyful in glory. Let them sing aloud upon their beds. Let the high praises of God be in their mouth, and a two-edged sword in their hand, to execute vengeance upon the heathen, and punishments upon the people, to bind their kings with chains and their nobles with fetters of iron, to execute upon them the judgment written. This honor have all his saints. Praise ye the Lord.
Good morning, Your Highness.
All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Kakwadash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples towards younger brothers, and peace and blessings and salutation to the hopeful lake out there pushing his word and truth and in sincerity across the four winds in the name of Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai, pushing to get up out of here. Shalom to the hopeful lake, the believers and listeners who may have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai. All right, and what we're gonna get into, to continue on, with another World War III update. All right, boots on the ground. Kind of get into, the details of what's been unfolding these last couple of days. Because it's uncharted territory for the small hats. All right, because what we see happening now, usually, when Iran will respond, they will respond, with one attack and wait to see what the small hats will do. Okay, and small hats will usually respond, all right, in a way to let the Iran know that they don't want to escalate anymore. So they'll do a weak response, and then that'll kind of be the off ramp, of the conflict. But now what we're seeing, all right, from Tehran, okay, is way more aggression than they've shown during this whole conflict. All right, and they just been spinning the block again and again and again. This is day 4. Okay, going into day 5. This is day 5. Yesterday was day 4. And they're constantly sending waves of ballistic missiles, man. Okay, we're gonna get some footage. We're gonna get some analysis. Got a few videos want to go into, but let's set the tone here. Okay, and then we're gonna go to the word off ramp. This is Revelation 9 and 12. It says, "One woe is past, and behold, there be 2 woes more hereafter." Okay, and that one woe was World War I. Okay, and behold, there are 2 woes more hereafter. There's World War II and World War III. Okay, so we know that World War I and World War II has taken place. So the only war left is this Third World War. Okay, and we're watching the build up. As we know, other prophecy must come to pass. All right, and we know even with this conflict, which this is the conflict that's going to spark the Third World War. Okay, this back and forth between the small hats and Iran. This is going to be the conflict that draws in all these major nations, okay, into this war. And it's going to cause these nations to come to where? All right, this particular region, which is the Valley of Jehoshaphat. Okay, matter of fact, let's get that real quick. Joel 3. Okay, because I say the war, all right, with Russia and Ukraine, and you have Pakistan and India, they got into it. All right, but those, because it's a world war, so all that plays a factor and is connected, to the overall, conflict, the war narrative. Okay, well, we know this conflict is going to be, all right, the powder keg event. All right, that's going to blow up. All right, and eventually go nuclear. Okay, so when you get this in Joel, all right, because there's a certain region. Okay, when you go here, this is Joel 3:9. It said, "Proclaim ye among the Gentiles, prepare war." And this is the spirit that's been in their region of the earth. Just constant war. All right, and the nations have prepared themselves against this beast system. All right, as we can see, Iran is more than equipped to deal with them small hats. Okay, it says, "Wake up the mighty men, let the men of war draw near, let them come up, beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears, let the weak sound strong." All right, and what we've seen with Iran and all these nations, but Iran being, the focal point now because of the recent conflict. Iran has invested a lot into their missile inventory, okay, their cyber warfare military inventory, okay, technology. I mean, okay, their cyber warfare technology, okay, their Navy. They've been going in. They've been putting a lot of their money, even with all the sanctions from America. They've been investing a lot, all right, of their GDP into military, and it's showing. Okay, it's showing what Iran has been putting their money towards. All right, plus with the assistance of all these other nations, man. Russia, China, North Korea. Okay, even Pakistan is saying they on board with Iran. Okay, and it's getting juicy, man. And things are going forward. Like I say, it might simmer down where nothing is going backwards. Okay, it says, assemble yourselves and come, all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about, till the cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Lord. Let the heathen be wakened and come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat, for there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about. Okay, so the valley of Jehoshaphat, that will be today in the region of western Syria. Okay, it was once part of our territory, but now how it's carved up, it's a part of western Syria. Okay, which their region, all right, is a hotbed, okay, for the battles that's going to lead into this third world's war. Okay, so the heathen have been awakened. There's a fiery spirit over there, and they going forward. Okay, and Iran is just taking Israel to uncharted territories, as we're going to get when we go into these videos. Now, I want to go to my guy here. Let me see, who my man is it. So let's go here to my guy Danny. I said we got a few videos to get into. All right. Well, before that, let's go to this just to get this definition, because you might hear this, if you watch and you keep up, with certain news on the war. Now, when you go to off ramp meaning in war, okay, because it's something we could see. It's exciting to see these things. And we know that all these point towards, the times that we're in. All right, because eventually, all right, there's going to be a conflict that arises, and it's not going to turn around, or it's not going to cool down. Okay, it's going to continue to escalate. All right, until that all-out war. All right, but we know that certain things have to be fulfilled before this thing goes nuclear. Now we can see a lot of conventional, war happen. Okay, because the main, highlight of World War III is when it goes nuclear. Okay, so we could see, a heightened, all right, activity in conventional warfare amongst these nations. Okay, so when you read here, it says, in the context of war or conflict, and off ramp, and it comes from, you know, like an exit on the interstate. You take an exit off an interstate called the off ramp. Okay, so this is where the term comes from. You're heading to a destination. Okay, but then you can take an off ramp. Okay, and get go to the gas station or do whatever. Go somewhere to eat. All right. Well, this is what's likened to war, because we know all roads lead to this third world war. Okay, and what you have these conflicts, all right, that push these nations closer to their war, and then they'll take an off ramp. They can come in many different ways. But what you go into, it says, in the context of war or conflict, an off ramp refers to a diplomatic or negotiated solution that allows a belligerent party to de-escalate or withdraw from the conflict without appearing to have conceded entirely. It's a way to find a peaceful compromise or exit strategy from a situation that might otherwise lead to further bloodshed or escalation. Okay, so you can see, don't be surprised if, they come up with an offering, to save face, and it makes them seem like no one is bagging down, but both sides, have compromised in some type of way, whether it's verbally, non-verbally, okay, official, documents or whatever. All right, so that could be a possibility we can see these next few days. Okay, because the small hats are in a very, very difficult situation. All right, and it puts America in a difficult situation. You see, there's a lot of pressure out there. Okay, what Iran is doing, which is a response to, their unprovoked attack by those small hats, is putting a lot of pressure on the West. Okay, so let's go here, because like I say, these small hats are not used. This is new to them. What's happening? They got a little taste of this, with the war that they had with Hezbollah in 2006, which they lost. All right, they had a small taste of this, but they never went through. They never been to this point where they are now, to where they're getting pummeled. Okay, so let's go here. There's civilians, all right, catching casualties. Okay, And you're not going to hear about the true casualties on the side of the small hats. Okay, they're going to always water that down. Okay, but you can't lie when it comes to this footage, man, and people's actual reactions. Okay, so let's go here. This is my guy, Danny uh, Hawthorne. He hosts a lot of interviews. Okay, dealing with the war. Pretty good channel to watch. To keep up what's going on. I put the link in the comment board. But he had different guests, on there, and different dealing with the war and dealing with the economy, different things. But very informative channel. All right, the guy Danny Hawthorne. So let's go. We're gonna let him go because he pretty much he's gonna do like a walk and talk. Everybody wanna do walk and talks now. But he's gonna go into all right the situation, okay, how things unfold and how this is uncharted territories for these small hats. Okay. So let's let this play.
Major missile salvo military experts are reporting that over 100 ballistic missiles were launched at Israel. The overall effect, of course, it's hard to verify, but in terms of the video imagery and the reports coming out from independent media as well as Western mainstream media, the damage is becoming more widespread, despite the fact that Iran is likely launching fewer missiles now than they were in their initial opening of Operation True Promise 3. The impacts are becoming harder and they're becoming more accurate. We saw this in Haifa. In Haifa, there have been videos showing burning all across this city. In particular, the oil refineries and power stations located there. Imagery and videos have shown that blackouts have occurred, and Israel is reporting this as well. Now, Israel, of course, sends all of its settlers into a frenzy with sirens warning them.
So you got blackouts happening, let you know that they hitting them power grids. Okay. So now the small hats are experiencing, okay, what's happening in Gaza. And we're gonna go to the comment board to show you that these small hats don't have, the public backing, the sympathy of the public as they usually, as they're used to. Okay, we're gonna go to the comment board on all these videos and just see, how the narrative is completely different than what the small hats are used to, being able to play the victim. Then when they go and do their wickedness, they look there as the hero. Okay.
Them to run to bomb shelters when.
Is your private student loan debt keeping you up at night? You really need to talk to Why Refi. Why Refi? Refinance.
Missiles come overhead. We saw this with Yemen, Hezbollah, etc. earlier phases of this war. Now with Iran, this is happening with increased frequency, but Iran has warned all settlers to leave Israel. Why? Because Iran knows where these bomb shelters are, and we have seen imagery from Israel itself showing that bomb shelters have indeed also been hit. So Iran has increased its escalation on Israel, in large part because Israel continues to target residential buildings, civilian areas, even hospitals in Iran. Iran is reporting 224 civilians have been killed. Alone in Israel overnight, at least 9 Israelis have been killed by Iran's missile barrage. Now, it's not just Haifa that was hit, because Haifa has been getting the brunt of the reports and imagery because of the importance of hitting the power station, but Tel Aviv continues to burn. Residential buildings have been hit, in large part because air defense systems are located in and around these residential buildings. We also saw that Ben Gurion Airport, a plume of smoke has arisen there, likely because Iran has hit there with ballistic missiles. And not only this, but the Negev Desert, which hosts the Dimona nuclear facility, as well as the Nevada Air Base, has come under heavy fire. Israel is trying to censor the imagery and video coming out from there, but we have seen that Israeli air defense systems are becoming visibly exhausted within the Nevada Air Base area, air defense systems being activated and failing to hit their targets, leading to a situation where actually these air defense systems hit back at themselves, fall to their ultimate doom, and become destroyed after missing their intended target.
So you have situations too, all right, to when those air, which I got some footage on it I want to show, but when those air defense missiles, okay, if they miss their target, well, they gotta fall down somewhere. So if that air defense misses its target, then it's like you're shooting missiles on yourself, because it'll miss, all right, the incoming projectile, and then it'll just fly out and land somewhere else in Israel, okay, which people have died, based on those air defense, all right, projectiles missing their targets and falling down, all right, on Israeli, okay, citizens, man, okay. So this is beautiful to see how the Lord just got all this coming back on Israel, man. Okay, if a brother could post that in I believe it's the book of Job, chapter 4, verses 7 and 8, Bible shot. All right, I'm gonna let this play some more. So these devils are losing every way, okay, and they can't do nothing with Iran. All right, and Iran's still going light, okay.
Iran is also targeting Patriot missile batteries. We have seen these be destroyed in this overnight salvo. And many military experts are saying that this is the most devastation that Israel has ever faced. The panic now is widespread. We saw Netanyahu go onto Fox News, and what did he say? Well, he said that not only is Iran trying to kill Donald Trump, but that Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu is the US's junior partner. And he has emphasized over and over again that the United States needs to enter this war on the side of Israel to a fuller extent.
You just said Iran tried to assassinate President Trump twice. Do you have intel that the assassination attempts on President Trump were directly from Iran?
Through proxies, yes. Through their intel, yes, they want to kill him. Look, he's enemy number one. He's a decisive leader. He never took the path that others took to try to bargain with him in a way that is weak, giving them basically a pathway to enrich uranium, which means a pathway to the bomb, padding it with billions and billions of dollars. He took up this fake agreement and basically tore it up. He killed Qasem Soleimani. He made it very clear, including now, you cannot have a nuclear weapon, which means you cannot enrich. He's been very forceful. So for them, he's enemy number one.
Yeah.
Look, they also tried to kill me, but I'm his junior partner.
When did
they
you
understand that President Trump is a great threat to Iran's plans to.
Probably one of the biggest questions that we get from our customers was, well, how do you really go about buying gold? One option that people have
to weaponize nuclear weapons and use them.
When did you tell President Trump you were going to launch these strikes?
Look, I've been in constant contact with President Trump. We've known each other for many years. And obviously we informed our American friends and President Trump, our great friend, ahead of time. We did. He knew about it, of course.
I mean, there were reports that President Trump kind of helped you achieve your strategic surprise by publicly urging you not to attack when he already knew you had decided to do it. So you were closely coordinating with the U.S. throughout this process.
Look, we're fully coordinated, but understand that America, under President Trump, will make the decisions that are best for America. And that's the way it is. He understands that I, as the Prime Minister of Israel, the one and only Jewish state, must make the decisions that are important for the survival of my country, and he will do what is best for America.
So the desperation is becoming.
So this shows you the desperation, that these small hats want to pull America, into this war. Okay. This is what these small hats want to do. And this all fulfills prophecy, man. And we can go ahead and get it. What's that? Jeremiah 49:20. We'll get there too. But let's go here. This is the brother Kazak Bun Yahweh. Okay. But he's, you see Benjamin Netanyahu is making this complaint like, look, they want to kill Trump too, and this is just all pushing war propaganda, to to pull people in, okay, to the cause of these small hats, and it's not working. Nobody wants America to go to war with Iran on behalf of the small hats, okay, which is going to happen, okay, but the public opinion is not being swayed in the way that they want it to be, okay. And it says, this is Job 4:7. It says, "Remember, I pray thee, whoever perish being innocent, or where were the righteous cut off?" Okay, and they always love to throw out, the fact of women and children, women and children. Well, women and children are not innocent. Okay. So when these things happen, all right, right now what we seeing with with the with Tehran, all right, with Iran, because usually, like I say, they will retaliate, but they'll do it, it'd be like a courtesy retaliation. All right, just to show their capability. Nobody would be injured, no casualties. All right, but now what we've seen, Hezbollah did this in 2006. Now they're going eye for an eye, all right, with these small hats. So the small hats attack residential buildings, all right. The uh, Iran is going to attack residential buildings, okay. If the small hats attack, the leadership of Iran is attacking the leadership uh, of Israel, okay. These small hats, the IDF. Okay, there's reports that Israeli scientists have been killed. Israeli top officials have been killed in some of these strikes. So now what we're seeing, all right, is eye for an eye. So whatever the small hats do, Iran gonna match it, all right, but with more intensity. Okay, and the IDF can't hold up to that. Okay, so going from here, verse 8. Okay, it's the brother GMS Good Soldier 144 says, "Even as I have seen, they that apply iniquity and sow wickedness reap the same." So this is nothing but the small hands reaping all the wickedness that they've done. Okay, that's why you got people on the comment board saying Tel Aviv is looking like Gaza. Tel Aviv is beginning to look like Gaza, man. Okay, and we know that we serve a righteous power that's allowing these things to happen, man. He's all about justice in the earth. Okay, so let's just play a little more.
More profound, we see the United States sending its tankers and its aircraft to the region. There have been many reports for those following the surveillance imagery of the activity of these flights. They are heading from the United States toward the Middle East, likely to, in the event that the United States escalates and decides to join, that they are ready to do so. So this is the situation. Now, many reports have also indicated that Israel does not have the munitions capability to take out not only Iran's nuclear facilities, but they have no ability to take out where their missile stockpiles are located, because they're located deep in the mountains, many of them underground, and only the Moab bunker buster bombs, which the United States, I don't know if you remember, back during the first Trump administration, tested these in Afghanistan. Only these bombs can potentially break through Iran's hidden stockpiles. So the situation for Israel is becoming more dire. The imagery, the idea that Israel is invincible, for example, that has been burst asunder. Israelis are not safe. They are being warned to leave. And the videos of Haifa, the videos of Tel Aviv, the imagery of Iran's missiles hitting Israel hard, and each day they be launched, at least 100 of them, is showing that Iran's capabilities are indeed intact and quite strong. Now, the former IRGC general, I believe his name is Razem, he said that Iran hasn't even dug into its newest stockpiles of hypersonic missiles. Some are saying that hypersonic missiles have not been used at all. So Uh, Iran is claiming that they have not even used their newest weapons, which will cause even more damage and are even more difficult to take out from the air. So it's quite obvious that if the scenes in Haifa, in Tel Aviv, Bnei Brak, and a lot of these Israeli cities and areas surrounding Tel Aviv is any indication, central Israel as well in the Negev desert, if they're any indication, it shows that Israel's air defense systems are exhausted, and that even Donald Trump has reported numerous times, and this is an interesting development. On the one hand, he said that the United States could become more directly involved in this conflict. And on the other hand, he has said that Israel and Iran will have to come to a deal. How I read that is that he is saying that one, both the situation is dire on both sides. Of course, he will never claim it's just the Israeli side.
What if you can create your own website by saying, this is what I want? With Wix, you can.
That is suffering the most from this, but that a deal will have to be made, which shows that perhaps the United States does not have a huge appetite in entering, and there's a huge debate about whether this is going to happen. Some believe the United States is already in on this war. I happen to agree with that. We know that the Trump administration knew all about this, that they were committing head fake after head fake to prepare for Israel's launch. They sent additional weapons. We know that the tankers are in full effect and leaving for the Middle East. We also know that Israel itself cannot survive without U.S. help throughout any part of any fight that Israel is engaged in, whether it's Gaza, the genocide, whether it is what happening in Lebanon, Syria, etc. We can go on and on. So the situation is that the United States is already involved, and we have to understand it from this perspective. Now, we also have to note that the Trump administration has a very hard decision to make right now. The Trump administration has to decide whether it is going to protect Israel and defend Israel to the fullest extent, knowing that eventually Israel's air defense systems will become so exhausted that it will be defenseless. And this is likely going to be unacceptable to the United States. But as I've said, if the United States enters the war to a more fuller extent, the United States will have to risk suffering potential catastrophic losses, especially on the PR standpoint, whether it's a U.S. naval destroyer being hit by one of Iran's newer hypersonic missiles that are incapable of being downed by air defense systems, or whether it is U.S. aircraft downed from the air, like the F-35s have been downed from Iran up until this point on the Israeli side. So these are the risks that the United States has to consider as it ponders whether it should wage a full-scale intervention against Iran. Now, in another report, it was noted that
So yeah, that's where we at. As far as all right, what's happening, and see, the small heads thought, that they had delivered a knockout punch, when they did their first strike on Tehran, in their mind, there was going to be a knockout punch. Okay. And it didn't play out like that. Okay. And now what's happening, they're being overwhelmed, and like I say, Iran is still going light, and that's 30, 25-year-old missiles that Iran is using, not even the hypersonics yet. Okay. Not even, the most powerful, warheads on top of those missiles, man. Okay. And what we have to understand, all right, this is what I want us to understand. So when America invaded Iraq, going back to 2001, okay, 2000 and like 2003. So when America went into Iraq, um, that's the neighbor to Iran. So Iran knew, okay, we could be next. So from that time on, Iran started stockpiling missiles and pouring into their military for a potential war with America. Okay, they've been doing this for the last 22 years. All right, they've been preparing their mind and their military strategy to go back and forth with America just in case it was a direct war between Iran and America and the U.S. So this is what Iran has been preparing for mentally, physically, strategy wise. They've been preparing to go and get into a back and forth with America. So the small hats, all right, they're not nowhere near the might of America's military. And this is what Iran has been gauging its military off of. The small hats are not even in the same arena as the Iranian military. Nowhere near. Okay? Iran has been preparing itself for America. All right. So these small hats, they play tough, with these little militia groups that they go to war with, air striking people with, no defense. Okay. They've ended up playing tough in the region. Now they want to try to handle Iran like Gaza, completely different. Completely different. Okay. So what we're seeing is how much stronger Iran is than these small hats, and it's way stronger. Okay. Iran can't, Israel can't even handle these small strike packages. These are just hundreds of missiles. Iran can send thousands of missiles at a time, day for day. Okay. And Tel Aviv will be a parking lot. Okay. Iran could turn Tel Aviv to a parking lot before the live stream in. Okay. So now Israel, these small hats, they've entered into this conflict and they're highly outmatched and they're screaming for help from America. Now, eventually, this is how it's going to play out. This is a prelude. But you see Donald Trump speaking about both sides need to come to an agreement, which America, they help these small hats, but then they try to play these peacemakers, just like they help Ukraine, and then they try to play like they're the peacemakers. Okay? That's the image America wants to try to portray as these great peacemakers in the earth. Okay, when they're behind, okay, the villain, okay, in the conflict. You see? So you can see, some type of negotiation, some type of ceasefire, okay, be brokered. Okay. But at the end of the day, this is just showing us what it's gonna look like. Okay. Now let's go here. I got a few, I think this is the video. All right. So let's go here. And it's just going into the footage, what's going on in Tel Aviv. You got, certain residents in the state of Israel, these small hats, taking footage, putting it on X, all right, on Twitter. Okay. So let's play this real quick. We'll jump around and trying to show a few things.
זה לא נפילות?
Censoring photos and videos of the successful Iranian counter-offensive has long been one of the signature traits of the criminal government led by war criminal Benjamin Netanyahu. Upon witnessing the sheer magnitude of Iran's retaliatory strikes, Israeli authorities immediately began urging rattled citizens to refrain from capturing videos or photographs of the missile-impacted areas. This is precisely why locations such as the repeatedly struck Nevatim Air Base, Ben Gurion Airport, the Haifa Port, the Rafael Defense Industry, the Ministry of Defense, the IDF headquarters, and several other strategic sites, including power plants, the Dimona nuclear facility, and the national energy grid, have all been subjected to intense censorship, deliberately made to appear as though nothing of consequence has occurred. In fact, international journalists are being actively barred from accessing these areas and providing the world with accurate reportage on the ground following these devastating impacts. This policy of censorship has also extended to the reporting of casualty figures. While Iran has openly acknowledged losing over 220 individuals to Netanyahu's immoral army in what was an unprovoked attack, the IDF, as is customary, continues to underreport its own losses in a desperate attempt to save face. An honest disclosure of casualties would inevitably provoke widespread fear across Israel, potentially leading to mass panic and exodus. Moreover, such transparency would lend greater weight to criticisms directed at the Iron Dome, which, to this point, has displayed limited effectiveness against even Iran's older generation of missile systems. In this video, we have compiled a series of clips retrieved from various social media platforms. As the editor of this show, I personally gathered and arranged these clips, carefully documenting scenes of impact and the dramatic downpour of missiles. That is precisely why I've chosen to voice this script myself. For me, Iran's newly established tempo is not only noteworthy but commendable. It has decisively demonstrated that Israel is far from invincible, and the much-touted multi-layered air defense architecture upon which Netanyahu's hardened resolve to provoke Iran was built has exhibited glaring vulnerabilities. Nevertheless, it is important to note that the OMT news team has not independently verified the majority of these clips, as many are sensitive and difficult to authenticate. However, we obtained most from users on X posting from within Israel, along with videos shared by rescue personnel. YouTube may very well censor this video, so I kindly urge you to take a moment to like and share it to help boost its visibility.
So what you're seeing now is these are missile defense systems, these rockets, these projectiles that are going up. Okay, this is a defense system, and you're going to see as they go up, all right, you're going to see Iranian missiles still come down, okay, and they're intercepting some of them, all right, but there's a majority, okay, that's getting through. You know, reports say about 70% are getting through, all right, and that's a bad percentage, okay. If you're in a boxing match, okay, and your opponent is landing 70% of his punches, you're not going to last long, especially, all right, if they're heavy punches, man, okay. So there's footage of them attacking those air missile defense themselves. You see, they're attacking the actual, all right, systems, you know, to shoot those projectiles for air defense. So they're dismantling the Iron Dome. Okay, it's going terrible for these small hats, man. Let's jump forward. I think got some more footage of, you know, damage. All right. Oh yeah, there's one guy, he was recording. Okay, and he's gonna shake his whole camera. All right, so let's start about right here. Okay, so yeah, the small.
We're Phoenix Energy, a family-owned oil company focused on unleashing American oil from North Dakota and Montana.
Yeah, the small hats, are in a very dire situation. Okay. So that whole missile defense system, the Iron Dome, is being taken apart. All right. And this is just phase one. Okay.
מה זה? מה זה? אלוהים ישמור.
תצילו, תתנו לכם. אבל איזה פחד אלוקים. הם נופלים על הרצפה.
נופל ב100%. השחתיכות של הטילים?
רצור הדסה. לא יודע, נפל 50. לא ספרתי.
ولعت بحيفا شرب ولعت بحيفا عم تشوف عشان عندنا
طلع هون طلع هون
توسخ بحيفا طلع نزل عرفك نزل
يلا هذاك الزبوش
نزل
يا بعرض اختي في واحد نزل فوق بعرض اختي فوق غاد يا بوم
Knock my boy off camera.
ولعت بحيفا شرب ولعت بحيفا عم تشوف عشان عندنا
طلع هون
توسخ بحيفا طلع نزل عرفك نزل
يلا هذاك الزبوش
نزل
Put your ass in the house. All right. So yeah, man. Oh, and this is every day. You see, this is what's happening every day, man. All right, and either they're gonna have to get on the off ramp, or America gonna have to come in. So I want to go here to this video of Conor McGregor, OG McGregor. He's a little more unbiased. Scott really get biased when it comes to America. He doesn't like the IDF. But you tell he's biased when it comes to America. But Douglas McGregor, he pretty unbiased with all parties. But he's gonna break down. He's a ex colonel of the Marines. So he's been in a lot of combat. So he's gonna give in-depth analysis, all right, of what this looks like. Okay, going forward for the small hats. All right. So let's let this play.
And there's also been reports that a lot of these targets were Iranian decoys. Not sure if you've seen those videos. That hasn't been verified. How possible do you think that is? I find that to be unlikely, just considering the level of expertise, the level of success that the Mossad has had. If they knew where all these commanders lived, I'm sure they'd know what's a decoy and what's not a decoy. Would you agree?
No, decoys are actually very effective. During the Kosovo air campaign in 1999, during that 78-day period when I was the director of the Joint Operations Center at Supreme Headquarters Allied Powers Europe, we monitored everything we could on the ground. And I would say that easily 70% or more of the targets that we struck were decoys. It's very difficult to tell from satellite imagery, let alone low Earth orbit satellite imagery. And then on top of that, intrusions into the airspace with unmanned systems. It is very hard to distinguish all the decoys from what's real. So no, I'm not surprised to hear that. That's part of the art of war. That always happens.
Capacitor course check is okay.
So what he's speaking about with decoys, all right, small hatch report, that they struck this, this missiles compound, they struck this, they struck that, but they be decoys, all right. A lot of things that the West, claim to have attacked are decoy. Okay, the Houthis do it, all right. Hezbollah did it, and the small hats, they waste all this, resources on trying to destroy, the ability for them to launch missiles and all these different things, but they'll all be decoys. Okay. So they mastered it because that's how they respond to, these multiple airstrikes that the small heads do, is they allow them to attack certain decoys that look like weapon depot, that look like launch pads, that look like, warehouses and stockpiles. So they do that, but it doesn't. So now you're wasting ammunition, okay, and you're not stopping, okay, the adversary from being able to retaliate. Because the whole purpose of the airstrikes is to limit, okay, how they retaliate. So the decoys, they've gotten very good at it. And Hezbollah was doing this in 2006, almost 20 years ago. Okay, so how much more complicated have they got with setting up decoys? Okay, so these airstrikes are pointless, and you can tell because it doesn't deter, it doesn't hinder, all right, the retaliation. The Houthis did it. Okay, America went in and did all their bombing in Yemen, and still they had to back down because they couldn't stop the Houthi rebels from attacking Israel, okay, and attacking American ships and vessels that was shipping to Israel. They couldn't stop it. Can't stop it now. Okay, so the West, all right, has been figured out. Okay, and these nations, all right, steps ahead. Okay, they're steps ahead, and it's just the Lord doing these things for the sake of prophecy, because it's time for America to fall. It's time for those small hats to be obliterated out their land. Okay, so let's let it play some more.
So what now, Colonel? When we spoke, when Hezbollah and Israel were at war, what happened afterwards? Obviously, Hezbollah's leadership were all. I think we spoke just before Nasrallah was killed, and now there's there's this calm on the Lebanese border, which is surprising, by the way, how Hezbollah distanced themselves from the war that's ongoing right now, which is a separate question. But what happens now between Iran and Israel? Does that continue escalating? Could that become into a regional war? How can Iran retaliate? And how far will Israel go?
Well, this depends at this point very heavily on the United States and what decisions made in Washington. I'm sure the Israelis have concluded that they cannot achieve their aims, and their aims, in addition to regime change, also include destruction of the enrichment facility and the nuclear capacity that Iran has developed without us. In other words, if we don't come in and help them, they can't achieve those aims.
They need the GBU-57, the bunker buster bombs.
Yeah, well, not just that, but there are many, many missiles, many different kinds of munitions. It's a very complex and time-consuming operation. It won't happen overnight, but I think they're looking for the B-2s to show up at very high altitude where they think they can bomb with impunity to attack these facilities. And they hope that this will rescue Israel from its current position, because Israel's position grows weaker by the day and Iran's grows stronger. Why? Because Iran's arsenal of missiles isn't quite inexhaustible, but pretty damn close. They're not going to run out of missiles. They're not going to run out of support. And they've got plenty of supplies and technical assistance pouring into the country from many, many different locations, not just in the Middle East, but also Russia, China, North Korea. There may be others that we don't know about. Iran's position grows stronger every day in the international arena. More and more countries are coming over to Iran's cause. Initially, it's psychological. Over time, it will become more material. Israel's position is the opposite. Israel is increasingly isolated, and it cannot withstand these onslaughts on its own. Remember, every time you fire a missile at a particular target that's incoming, in other words, we're talking about air defense missiles, it's habitual that you fire 2 or 3 missiles against every one missile that is aimed at you. Well, you're going to run out of missiles pretty quickly.
If you live anywhere here in the red circled area in the map and you have an old, struggling air conditioning or heating system.
And Israel's very small. It's smaller than the state of New Jersey. And Iran is the size of Western Europe. And there are more than 90 million people living in Iran. So while Israel can certainly make life miserable for Iran. It could do a lot of damage. And of course, it always has nuclear warheads. And if it decides that it needs to use a nuclear warhead in order to win its war, that's very dangerous, because at that point, I would be very surprised if nuclear warheads did not show up in Tehran.
All right, wow. Going to Iran's retaliation now. I was surprised. I think I was doing a live with, it was Scott Ritter at the time when Iran was hitting Israel back. And Scott said, you know, they need at least a few waves for this to be a decisive retaliation. But they only had, I think, 3 or 4 waves, about 200 missiles. Did that, was that less than you expected? Was it more of a symbolic response, or do you think that was a pretty extensive response from Iran? And what do you expect Iran to do over the next few days?
I think the attacks will intensify. The numbers of missiles will increase. The damage that will be inflicted will be much worse. What we're witnessing is the aftermath of the initial disarming strikes that the Israelis launched. The Israelis did succeed in disrupting command and control. They succeeded at least partially disarming or disrupting the integrated air defenses. So to that extent, it was successful, at least for the first 24 hours. What has surprised the Israelis, and frankly has surprised me, is the rapidity with which the Iranians have recovered. And they continue to recover, and their power and their influence continues to increase. So I would expect far, far worse strikes in the future than anything we've seen to this point.
So you don't think Iran has been significantly weakened? Or you think they have been significantly weakened, but they can recover relatively quickly?
Well, I think they were weakened. You know, what's this word significant? Let's get back to reality. Iran is a nation of 90 million. It's the size of Western Europe. It has thousands upon thousands of missiles. How do you weaken that? You can temporarily disrupt it. You can suppress it for a short time. But we've discovered pretty clearly that, you know, short of the use of a nuclear weapon, and that's not an impossibility, that Iran is absolutely, I would argue, unbeatable.
You're the second person I've spoken to, Colonel, that mentions the Israeli nuclear weapon. But do you think it's even on the table? So Israel seems to have, to a different degree, the advantage right now in the war. They've got air superiority over Iran. Again, feel free to disagree. And they've gotten rid of a lot of these commanders, which are not replaceable. You said the same thing about Hezbollah last time as well, and they have been replaced. But when do you think Israel would even consider using a nuclear weapon in this war? And would the US be okay with this? Like, would they require America's authority before using a nuclear weapon?
Well, let's look at, there are 2 questions here. One is about Israel and the other is about the United States. The Israelis historically have always let it be known, either through the back door, so to say, through other powers, or by inference, that they have a nuclear weapon and that they're prepared to use it. One of the reasons, excuse me, in 1973, that the Egyptians, once they crossed the Suez Canal and established a defense on the far side, the eastern side of the Suez, and did not march further east, is because Sadat understood that the Israelis had a nuclear weapon. And he said, if we go for the Mitla Pass and we try to penetrate Sinai and move into Israel, we have to expect that the Israelis will use a nuclear weapon against us. The Egyptians, even now, that are sitting on the border with Israel, are very hesitant to take on the Israelis directly, not because they cannot do it militarily, they can, but because they have been threatened periodically over many years with the use of a nuclear weapon by Israel to destroy the Aswan Dam. Now, that would have catastrophic consequences for Egypt. I think people in the Middle East are tired of being bullied by the Israelis. And I think they're looking at Iran as standing up to the Israelis, even though they do not have, at this point in time, a nuclear weapon, and are determined to fight it out. Of course, they're large enough in terms of space and population that they can do that. But I think over time, we'll see everyone else in the region rally to them. So the bottom line is, would the Israelis use it? I think what you might see in the future is, as Israel weakens and is subject to more and more destructive impact from Iran, and as Iran's position in the international community grows stronger, that the Israelis may well tell us, you know, if we can't survive and you're not going to help us, we'll use a nuclear weapon. that could happen. We would not want that to happen, clearly. But that's something they could threaten us with.
What does it really take to stop a motivated, violent criminal dead in his tracks?
Twisting, you think you could twist America's arm by threatening to use a nuclear weapon if the US does not get involved?
That could happen, especially as Israel's position weakens. Israel's in a terrible position right now. Israel can't easily replace its losses. And as I said, Israel is, by comparison with Iran, a postage stamp. I don't think Israel would be doing what it's doing right now if it wasn't reasonably confident that it has control of the White House and the Congress. They think they've got control of President Trump, that when he's presented with this fait accompli, Israel is in a fight for its life. This is an existential fight for Israel. You have to come and help us, that he will do so. Perhaps he will. I don't know. That's the assumption. Most people in the United States assume that's the case. And when I say people, I'm talking about people inside the Beltway in Washington. I don't know. Because President Trump must surely understand that if we become directly involved, the temptation for many other states to do so is overwhelming, not the least of which Russia and China, as well as other states and virtually all the Muslim states in the region. Now, why would this be? Because I think people look at what's happening and they say, well,
see, it's a lot on the table. You know, it's not just, you know, it wouldn't just be America going to war with Iran. Now you invoke, okay, Russia and China, you know, North Korea, Pakistan, Afghanistan, okay, so India, you know. So now you activate all these other players. And this is just a prelude of what it's going to look like when the Lord is ready for this thing to go full scale. What we're seeing is a prelude of what it's going to look like. Okay. This is the center conflict. Okay. This is the center stage conflict with the small hats in Iran. And it's going to drag in these other powers. And America, once they cross their threshold, okay, of directly attacking Iran, it's not going to be no going back. Okay. So what we could potentially see, you know, is some type of off-ramp situation where they, okay, chill down, they cool down, okay, but eventually the Lord gonna put them back on the interstate towards this war. Okay. Now how many times they get off the exit before they get to this war, we don't know. But we know that this is all leading towards their war. All right, if that makes sense, you know. So now he's going to go into the dynamic of Russia and China and how they play a part in this. Okay, so let's let this play some more.
If we don't come to the aid of this country and prevent it from being destroyed by the United States, then we'll be next on the menu. Remember, Russia has already been subjected to this. The same forces in New York City and in the London city banks, the people who wanted to get into Russia, destroy the state, rip it apart, rape its resources, partition it, turn it into a permanently weakened third world state, have failed. They didn't achieve their aims. The Russians have recovered. They're stronger than ever. They're not fools. They know that there are a lot of people in London, in the banking industry, in the financial industry, as well as in Washington and New York City, who very much want control of the oil fields in the Middle East. Remember that for Americans who are thinking strategically, if you want to dignify their thinking with that word, I don't say that, but in their minds, strategically, if you can get control of the oil and natural gas fields in the Middle East, if you can destroy Iran and bully everybody else in the line, then you have in their minds China by the throat, because China is extremely dependent on the oil and gas that comes through the Persian Gulf. I mean, frankly, it's not that important to us anymore economically, but it is important to the world and specifically to China. The question is, if we go into this with the goal of destroying Iran and ultimately getting control of these oil and gas fields, how close do we come to a direct confrontation with Russia and China North Korea, and any number of other states. We don't know, but it's a very dangerous position to take. You can only bully and humiliate people to a certain point, and then they stand up and fight back. So I'm very concerned that this thing could rapidly run out of control. You know, Clausewitz used to say, before you start a war, you'd better understand what kind of war you're really fighting. And I think the Israelis thought that they could bully Iran more easily, they could suppress it more easily, they could be successful in their efforts to disrupt and bludgeon Iran than they were. They miscalculated. Iran has recovered. It's growing stronger. This is going to get worse, not better. So that was a bad miscalculation. Now they're falling back, as perhaps they always intended to in any case, on the United States. The United States normally doesn't like to intervene in things unless we can dictate the outcome. We like to impose solutions. We can't do that. The Russians won't sign up for it. Neither will the Chinese. And by the way, I don't think most of the Europeans will. So I think this is a very dangerous time. And that's why I wrote in this X that I sent out a proposal for a great power peace conference. We need the United States to sit down with Russia, China, India, Brazil, these great powers, and help arbitrate the situation. We need to put a stop to what's happening in Gaza. If anybody thinks that this is in isolation from Gaza, they're wrong. The Israeli contempt for human life in Gaza, their readiness to murder and starve tens of thousands of human beings, even millions to death, is something that has profoundly affected the whole world except the United States, because most Americans know very little about it. The media really doesn't cover it very much. So I don't think there's an appreciation of the depth of hostility and the readiness to push back against us that exists today.
How likely, before I ask my next question, there's just been a report of an Israeli drone that struck police headquarters in Tehran. So we've got more drones here. That's the footage that just came in. We've got more reports here of Israeli drones being involved. Question I have for you is, how likely is it that Iran strikes U.S. bases in the region before the U.S. gets involved, maybe based on Israel's request? What's a higher risk? The U.S. joins based on Israel's request, or Israel kind of twists Trump's arm into joining, or Iran forces the U.S. to join by hitting their bases?
The Iranians will not deliberately attack any U.S. positions in the region unless we directly intervene. Now, they know that we've given plenty of help and assistance to the Israelis. That's not really open to debate. But why would you want to give Washington an excuse to come in full force against you? That would be very stupid. And I think the Iranians are sensitive to that. They will stick to their current approach, which is to focus their attacks on Israel. They will keep an eye out and watch carefully on the things that we do, but they're not going to give us an excuse to go in.
So yeah, this is on the position, okay, that the small hands have put America in, you know, because if America joins in, because I want to show you real quick. So this is what you have. Now these are all the military bases. Make sure it's showing up. Let me know if y'all can see this map. I tried to blow it up a little bit, but so here go Iran, and all these American flags represents American military bases that's around Iran. Okay, now if America, okay, gets involved, all these are sitting ducks. Okay, all these bases are well within Iran's range of those precision missiles that they have. Okay, and they struck, you know, military bases, American military bases before. Okay, when Trump, all right, ordered the assassination of General Soleimani back in 2020. You know, what you had was Iran. They struck, all right, a base in Syria, okay, which it had to go over the whole country of Iraq, all right, and it hit the bases in Syria, okay, U.S. military bases. So if America does this, all right, all these troops and all this military assets in this region, okay, are going to be greenlit, okay, by the Iran Revolutionary Guard. Okay, they're gonna be greenlit. So America is not a simple option. Now, can America do a lot of damage in Iran? Absolutely. Can Iran do a lot of damage to America? Absolutely. Okay. So it's no easy decision. All right. But eventually the Lord gonna force, okay, America to get involved. All right. So it can drag in, all right, these other nations. Okay. So yeah, we just gonna keep, continue watching these things, man. Oh yeah, that's what I wanted to go to too before we close out. All right. Um, so I wanted to show these different so when you go to the different videos and you go to the comment board, all right, what do you see? All right, it says Israel is becoming as flat as Gaza. Okay. It says when you're not fighting small children, you're not so tough. Okay. And it says Iran honoring Palestinian children. Iran has the right to defend itself. Uh, Finally, the Israeli citizens get close and real to Netanyahu's creation. All right. It said Israel should be renamed Palestine. Okay. It says, thank you, Iran, for making the world a safe place for women and children. Zero sympathy for the evil so called chosen tribe. Zero sympathy for the evil so called chosen tribe. Okay. You see? And it says, amazing how loud evil people scream when hurt visits them. All this destruction is caused through one evil criminal trying to prevent from being prosecuted in his own country. Speaking of Benjamin Netanyahu, it says, remember Gaza, please. Okay. It says, what is it? Glory to the Iranian people. It's the Zionist Netanyahu who started. He has been bombing all Arab countries in the region for years. What I can never understand that the German committed is going to that. But it says Israeli people have never experienced such violence. Don't mess with Iran. Okay. Iran has the right to defend itself. Okay. Yeah, man. It said, looks like Iran was not bluffing about their missile technology. Yeah, and the small has finding out the hard way. Okay? It said people who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones at others. So let's just a few more, just to show you this is the same, okay, on all these comment boards. Okay, let's go to this one. Just going to the comments. All right. It said, thank you, Iran, for making this a better world. Iran is saving mankind from the darkness, from devil. Okay. And these Edomites are being called out, man, on every platform, man. All right. It says Israel now seems to be tasting its own Gaza bitter medicine. Okay. It said Iran has a right to defend itself. Okay. And there was another one. Because you have people in America, saying that they stand with Iran. Okay. People in Canada, saying that they stand with Iran. I seen on the comment boards. Okay. So yeah, man. All right. There's no small head sympathy. Okay. None of these comment boards I've seen, there's absolutely no small head sympathy, man. Okay. So yeah, we'll end it here. All right. The devil's gonna lose. Okay. So let's go here. Post it. Yeah. So this is the book of Isaiah 32 and 5. It says this is NLT. In that day, ungodly fools will not be heroes. Scoundrels will not be respected. Okay. So these devils, their days of, playing the hero, the victim and hero is over. Okay. And the Lord got a spirit in the earth that's in defiance to Edomite rulership. Okay, and the ultimate all right war is going to be waged through Yahushua. Okay, because he's going to shut down everything. You know, the heathens, Iran, Russia, China. He's going to shut it all down. Okay, and retake the earth. All right, and settle righteousness, man. You see, so yeah, that's the point. Just want to get into that. You know, matter of fact, uh, let's go here real quick. Since I said that, usually how we end it when you go to Revelation 11. This is the book of Revelation, chapter 11. So like going back to the KJV. All right, so this is the book of Revelation, chapter 11, verse 14. The second woe was past, and behold, the third woe coming quickly. Okay, and I say they, gonna keep getting off these off ramps. Okay, but these things are happening. Time is sped up. Okay, but there's only so many off ramps because even on the interstate, you got points to where there ain't no off ramps. You got to ride it out. You see, so eventually they're going to run out of off ramps, and they're going to have to come on with it. Okay, because these nations feel it. All right, you best believe they listen to the prophets, and they can feel. Okay, they step across certain thresholds, ain't no going back. All right, Revelation 11:15, and the seventh angel sounded, and there was great voices in heaven saying, the kingdoms of this world are become the kingdoms of our Lord and of his anointed, and he shall reign forever and ever. Okay, so this is what it all leads to, beyond, the skirmishes and the fights between these nations, was it's leading to Yahushua coming and taking, all right, the kingdoms of this world unto himself, all right, and dividing it amongst, his brethren, those first fruits, okay, and it's going to be the beginning of a righteous forever rulership, okay, and which we look forward to. All right, so we're going to stay tuned in and see how it unfolds, where it goes from here. All right, so Lord will, you brothers, all right, and you sisters are edified. Till next time, I say shalom.